Well, it seemed inevitable from when he burst onto the AFL scene in the most eye-catching of ways that this man was destined to join this elite company. At his best, he was unstoppable, and his premiership success and array of individual awards attest to his absolute star power.
There's not a flaw in his game. You look at when do players become great players and legends of the game is that they do what's required when no one's watching. That's what made him become the player he was. And the bigger the game, the better.
Pure Chris Judd, power, strength and skill.
Judd from the takeaway. He's the best in the business.
Oh, I think the first couple of training sessions you saw glimpses of the player he was going to become. He'd take the ball, accelerate, weave through, dodge players, and then hit up a key forward was really impressive. And right from the outset, you knew he was something pretty special.
Judd. It's a highlights reel. That is as good as it gets.
He could win his own ball inside better than most people in the comp. His explosiveness to get outside, his blistering speed, his ability to run and carry, use the ball by foot and hand, being creative by hand, and then also he was a midfielder who constantly hit the scoreboard.
Oh, how about that for a tap? Right to Judd, puts the foot on the accelerator, and Chris Judd has kicked a sensational goal.
He was confident, not arrogant. He went onto the football field knowing that he was better than most people on that ground because of everything he'd done leading into that game. You feel like every time you're playing alongside him, you're playing with someone great, and you got to see the show firsthand.
Judd, brilliant gather by the champ, goes with the left foot. How does he manage this? It's supernatural.
We'd sit in our meetings and he'd openly speak about who's the target player, who we want to try and target, what areas we want to target, and not all the time was about him. And that's what made him a great footballer, a great teammate and a great leader, is he wanted to get our midfield humming and wanted to win as a collective, not as an individual player. And, Chris certainly made all of us look better.
That's where Judd is. He's a genius.
When you look at the calibre that are at your feet, you could know that no matter what situation or where you were on the ground, if you said it's going to an area, he would be there. And if I didn't get it there, I'd get some feedback about why I didn't get it there. And then vice versa, if he didn't get there, it was a bit late and they got there, well, it went the other way.
Shot from the boundary.
I think with everything involved with Chris was about how Chris could look good. So at times you just had to do it for the team and push a bloke underneath the ruck contest to make you look stupid, to allow him to get a clean path. He didn't get angry at the umpires or anything either.
See Judd, 3 votes.
He had that inner drive where if something happened that he didn't like, he'd steel himself and make sure that didn't happen again. The time that he spent on his craft, whether it was days off, before weights, post-training, the amount of time he spent on the little things to make sure that when we did get to a game, he could execute. That attention to detail rubbed off on everyone. You saw him and Daniel doing touch sessions where you're virtually booting the ball as quick as you can from 3 metres away. And it was a comp who could take them cleaner. And then it went from there to the chemistry that we would have on the football field was just purely through the volume and time we spent doing it.
Just pure magic.
One games I'll never forget was against Brisbane up at, Brisbane when he kicked 5 goals and turned the game on its head.
5.5, I think so. I think so.
What he did in finals was unbelievable.
Got it out to Judd. The Eagles are away. Watch this man go.
The prelim weekends, the one that we played in Adelaide, the thing with Chris, you knew something was always going to come, and you sort of look around waiting for it, and before you knew it, there it is.
Judd, the left hand and bounce if you don't mind. You can't do that unless you're great, I reckon.
You could sleep well at night knowing that come a grand final, he'd done everything possible to perform at his best, and he did that consistently.
The winner of the Norm Smith medal, Chris Judd.
The West Coast Eagles are the premiers for 2006.
Yeah, I'll never forget, I got a phone call from him after the season finished, and he goes, "Oh, I'm out." And I said, "Oh, well, whereabouts are you? We'll come and have a beer." And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm out. I'm heading back to Melbourne." So sort of Yeah, it shocked me a little bit to have a really close mate and a massive figure of the footy club to leave, but I sort of thought at some stage he might have done it.
The Juddernaut has begun.
I feel he was a different player at West Coast to what he was at Carlton. After the groins, he probably had to change a little bit and become more of an inside, contested ball player. And, I think that was probably highlighted by a game he had against Sydney in a final.
Judd, he pokes it brilliantly and again runs and kicks long.
Judd again, gee, what a game. Back comes Judd. Now this is like schoolboy football.
I think that's what makes great players, their ability to be able to adapt, when they suffer injury and how they respond to that. And he did an unbelievable job at that.
Look away, hand pass to Judd. This would be fitting. This would be fitting.
What could he do on a football field? Not many can do. You look at his record, whether it's Brownlow's, Norm Smith's, best and fairest. He's done the whole lot, and I think that's why it has to be put up there that he's as good, if not the best, that I've ever played with. He made himself, he made his teammates, and he made the places that he was at better places. Yeah, it's an unbelievable achievement and one that he thoroughly deserves.
A career played in two halves. I'd make the case that each is worthy of a place in the Australian Football Hall of Fame. Chris Judd, congratulations.
Thank you, Jared. Yeah, it's a huge honour.
When you think back, does it feel like two different careers almost rolled into one?
Oh, look, it does. I mean, when I think back to my footy career full stop, to be honest, it feels like it was 30 years ago and happened to a different person, really. But, yeah, there were two obvious distinct parts being at two different clubs, but I guess those periods of my career feel pretty different for a number of reasons. But, yeah, very fortunate to play for two great clubs and, like you said, had a really fortunate career in two different places.
Were there two different players in there as well?
Well, there were, yeah. Yeah, there were. I mean, I was, I had an overarching philosophy to be good at something, better at something than other people. You had to do something different, and that stuck with me throughout my whole career. The doing something different at West Coast was just more of everything. And I had some great models, people to model that behaviour off. When I got there, I walked into the club and I had, Glenn Jakovich was there, Ben Cousins was there, Drew Banfield, Ashley McIntosh, Peter Matera, like some of the all-time great players and great people you could really model behaviours off. And I had an assistant coach there in Robbie Wiley who took me under his wing. So, yeah, I mean, that was the real theme from that era, personally. And then Carlton was a different phase. It was a different group. My body was in a different phase, and there's probably a lot more thought going into preparation, but certainly was never able to do those sort of training loads that I enjoyed doing at West Coast.
So that overarching philosophy, did you concoct that with your dad?
Yeah, I did. I think I had some good lessons early on in life in some other sports where I got some clear feedback on the more training you do, the better the outcome. And, yeah, I think that was just a core belief or core philosophy, if you like, that stayed with me throughout, junior sporting days and then through AFL years as well.
So is there an athletics carnival that's central to that?
Well, there is, yes. I mean, I did little athletics as a kid, and each year I would... I'd qualify in the top couple for the region, and then I'd go to the state championships and I'd finish 7th or 8th. And that just happened every year for 3 or 4 years in a row. And then one year the same pattern was emerging, and I went to the regionals, and I think I came second and qualified for the state championships for the 800 metres. And my dad said, "Do you want to do some training this time around?" And I was young. I was probably maybe 12 years old, something like that. And I said, "Well, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do some training." So we trained every day for a month, which is not really how you structure a training program. You're meant to, particularly as a young kid, you're meant to have days off your legs, and, the sports scientists would just shake their head at that amount of training load in such a short period of time. But that's what we did anyway. We got up at 6 o'clock every morning and trained. We lived around the corner from a sandy earth track and not too far from the beach, so we'd alternate between sort of running the beach and hill sprints or 400 metres sessions on the track. anyway, at the end of that month period, I ended up winning the state championships, and it was just really good validation for, sticking to the process of doing extra and getting a desired outcome that I didn't realise at the time how powerful that illustration was, but I think it really had a huge impact on how I view sport and probably life as a whole.
If we hit a couple of the touchstones of your career. So round 12, 2013, for footy fans, it's the Chris Judd game. You kick 5 goals, the Eagles win by 69 points. Red letter for us, significant for you?
It was, yeah, it was. I think a couple of things. I think personally it gave me some confidence because Brisbane were, just a generational team at that phase. But I think more importantly, West Coast in that time was really focused on being a powerhouse in how they ran, particularly through that midfield dynamic. I remember speaking to Ben Cousins, in the years leading up to that game and talking about how we needed to get bigger and stronger so that we could match Brisbane because they were just enormous at that time. They were so much stronger than all the other teams, and when we would play them, when we played them the year before that, we were just physically dominated. And it was always really clear that the way to overcome that sort of a team wasn't by trying to outmuscle them, but was to be able to outrun them and almost use their weight as a disadvantage because they wouldn't be able to tolerate the amount of running you put through them in the game. So, to go over to the Premier's cauldron, if you like, in Queensland and beat them and really do it through a new style of game, I think was really powerful for the group as a whole and gave us a lot of confidence that idea around doing something different, and that different being lighter but being an elite running team was going to hold us in good stead.
The Brownlow medal at 21 in your 3rd season. You're the toast of the night. Beck is the front page of every paper in the country. Does life change instantly there?
It did. Yeah, it did. It was it was a wonderful night. It was an incredible honour and, very strange at the time to be, a third-year player and still, a baby in AFL footballing sense to be heaped with that sort of an award. And it was a thrill, but it really did feel like a before and after event where, some wonderful opportunities opened up from it. But life was just very different, things around privacy, having a partner who was, seemingly public property as well. There's a lot of things to get used to. And my memories are of, a really special night, but an exclamation point between life before that and life after it as well.
2 grand finals, consecutive years, famous grand finals. In the first, you're the Norm Smith medalist in the losing team, which is always a conflict for those who seem to have done it. And then the next year, you're the premiership captain lifting the trophy. So that's the literal, that's the extremes, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, the disappointment around losing that premiership in 2005, I think, was mitigated by the fact of just how young that group of players was. And I don't think any of us, I'm sure Drew Banfield did and a couple did, but certainly I didn't realise that there may have not been another opportunity at the time. It just felt like, we've got here now, we just missed out. It'll only be a matter of time before we get another opportunity and we're good enough to win it. And fortuitously, that's how it played out the next year. But, as an older player now, not an older player now, an older player back then would have fully appreciated just how many moving parts go into getting to a grand final and potentially winning that game. So, the ignorance is bliss at times, and it was an incredibly disappointing day, but it did just feel like it was a stepping stone and only a matter of time before that team was going to be good enough to hold up the cup.
And the second Brownlow, so by then you're more of a veteran player, you're at another club. I don't know whether it's a grind at that stage, but your level of excellence has held for years on end. You're in the best 3 players in the competition every year. Is that satisfying? Is that second Brownlow satisfying for all that's gone into it?
Yeah, it was. It was different to the first in lots of ways. It was an exciting phase for the football club then. I mean, I came to Carlton under Brett Ratton's first year. He was a young coach that was really looking to, I guess, reinvigorate or create an environment where the players could enjoy their footy again. And at that time we had, Mark Murphy, Bryce Gibbs, Matthew Cruiser as young guys coming up, and a lot of experienced players who'd had a challenging start to their footy career that really decided they wanted to dig in and improve that footy club. And, I think my Brownlow at Carlton was probably the third year we'd played in finals a couple of years in a row, but it's seen some good improvement. And the 2011 year as a footy club was my best year at the footy club. So it was an exciting phase for the Blues. The Brownlow I was less maybe embarrassed by being compared to some of the players that I'd grown up idolising, and was able to just really enjoy that night for what it was. But yeah, it probably symbolically for me, it was different. It just required maybe a lot more thought in terms of managing body and professionalism, and probably dealing with the expectations that have been building for a large part of my career.
And your last day as a player, so this is unscripted, this is unscheduled. It finishes on the mobile stretcher with a wrecked knee. How do you reflect on how it ends?
Well, it feels like watching Lightning McQueen in Cars, to be honest, in a lot of ways. I don't know. I mean, there's not many players get the perfect ending at all. I think one thing for me, that ending, you get so good at lying to yourself and convincing yourself that you can keep going, or your body's all right, or you've got more in you. That moment was a definitive full stop on my career, and in a way I was grateful for the decision to be completely taken out of my hands. So not an ideal way to finish, but, for the sort of journey I had throughout my footy career, there's not too much there I could complain about.
To be so young and free when you came to the game and the way you played, it was pure exhilaration for so many who have watched, and it's distinct. I think the way you come onto the scene in those years lives in so many imaginations. Can you capture what it was to feel like that, even though it feels a long time ago?
It did feel just really exciting to be on such steep improvement curve that I was able to enjoy individually, but the club in West Coast at the time was able to improve experiences as well, and to just be able to throw as much work as you wanted at your body, and for your body to just be able to bounce back was remarkable, and something that once it goes, you can't imagine having that again. And also just when you grow up with players at that age, and to develop a relationship with a couple of players where you can almost understand what they're going to do without language is really special and very rare. I mean, you sort of have that with your wife often at home. You can know what she's thinking without her saying anything, and maybe a few other people in your life. But when you can get that with some players where you know they're going to turn a certain way just by the way they move their body and some of their cues, it's very special to be a part of that and share that with other people.
So permit me an observation. You feel ruthlessly pragmatic about your footy. Can you look back and be nostalgic, romantic about it at all?
I can, but I lack a little bit of emotion. So most things I do are pretty sort of black and white, but I mean, at times like this, certainly you can look back, or if a clip comes up, a player you played with, I do get that sense from time to time. I remember watching Cade Simpson's highlight clips a few months ago. It was something to do with Carlton, and just getting that nostalgia and that sense of, I guess it's a sense of loss in a way, because that person, the footballer, finishes up when they finish up, and a new person's created, and often that new person isn't as exciting as the old person initially. Like that's reality. So there's a sense of loss there. It's not something I think about a lot, but the overarching feeling I have is just how fortunate my footy career was to be able to arrive at those clubs at those times, and to share the journey with so many people.
You've given us so much, Chris. Are there a few thank yous you'd like to say tonight?
Yeah, there are. Thanks, Jared. I guess I'd like to start with the two football clubs I was lucky enough to represent, to West Coast and Carlton, to all the players I played with. It's such a unique circumstance to run onto a field and play a contact sport with with people you love and to be able to share the locker room and the laughs along the way. To the coaches, I played under, Robbie Wiley, Peter Sumich, Bomber Riley at Carlton, to John Worsfold, Brett Ratton and Mick Malthouse, as well as senior coaches. I learned a lot from all those people in different phases of my career, so thank you. To the fans, if I think back to the special moments in my career, one of the reasons they are so special is it has the ability to touch so many different people. So to the fans from those two football clubs that came out and supported along the way, thank you. And then, really to my family, to my wife, to my kids who, my footy career is a foreign object to most of them. My two eldest have a bit of an understanding of it. But to those two, to my wife and to extended family and friends for all the support in what can be a, pretty insular vocation at times to people that are outside the industry. I've just had a huge amount of support from them and then the industry as a whole to, still be speaking about your football career 5 years after it's finished does feel self-indulgent in some sense, but it's another example of just how fortunate I've been in my footballing journey.
I think every footy fan, Chris, would say to you, thank you and congratulations.
Thanks, Jared.